If you wear glasses, you know how hard it can be to pick the right frame, especially when we have to pick them up every, what, 1, maybe 2 years, maybe longer if you're lucky and your eyes prescription doesn't change that often, or maybe you're just a little bit lazy, which is fine. And regardless of where you go to get your glasses, it can be so overwhelming when you have so many options. So hopefully this video will help you on your next visit to the eye doctor. And it doesn't really matter if you go to Costco or a different store or maybe a private eye doctor to get your glasses. This advice is for everyone. So first I want to help you how to read the frame's measurements. So every frame is going to be a little bit different, but there's only so many places where the measurements can be. All you need to do is look at the little arm on the inside and you'll be able to read all of the measurements. You're going to have the lens width, you'll have the nose bridge width, and the temple length. So this is the length width. So this frame, for example, is a 54-18-145. So what that means is that this lens from here to here is 55 millimeters. From here to here is another 55 millimeters. The nose bridge is this area right here, and that's going to be 18 millimeters. Now the temple is 145, which means that from here to the end is 145 millimeters. And this will be important, especially when you're looking at kids versus adult frames. When we're looking at kids frames, and I unfortunately don't have a kids frame with me, but you want to look at temples that are a little bit shorter because kids tend to have smaller heads. So therefore their ears are going to be closer to the front of their face. So you want the temple to not be as long. There have been so many times when kids come and get like an adult's frame, which is wide enough, like it's good enough in the width for them, but then the arms will stick out like crazy out here. And then when we do the adjustments, and we can do adjustments on these, sometimes it can be a little uncomfortable. Sometimes this temple will be getting bent right here and it'll be like a 90-degree angle. And that can sometimes cause discomfort behind the ear. So it's better to find something that fits a little bit better on the temple rather than just focusing on what the front looks like. Now, like I said, every frame is going to be a little bit different. So when you're looking for a frame for kids and you have that issue, there's a couple of things that you can look at. This metal frame, for example, this doesn't bend any further than this. So if the kid's ear is somewhere around this area, it might be kind of hard to get that frame to be adjusted properly. Now, if you have a frame that's plastic, sometimes we can bend this a little bit closer to the front of the frame, which might be a little bit easier. Again, everything will depend on the frame, the shape of the head. So if you have any questions with this, don't be afraid to bring the frames over to your optician and ask him, hey, is this going to be good enough for the kids? Make sure you look at the temples. So now that you know how to measure the glasses, how do you know which one's going to be the best fit for you? I wish I had a really easy answer and I'm like, oh, just measure your head. And you could, actually. But it's, I don't know. So one of the things you can do is you can actually measure your head. Like literally just get a ruler and go from temple to temple. These are your temples right here. So that's where you want to measure from here to here and then see how long that's going to be. Add that up and then you can do the math comparing the frame. So for example, if this is a 54-18-54, that's 126 millimeters. So if my head is anywhere close to that, then you know that it's going to be probably a good fit. Now, the reason I say probably is because every frame is a little different. That's going to be like the theme of today's video. Every frame is a little bit different. There's no one answer fits all, unfortunately. So you could do that, or you can do what most of us do, which is go in and try them on. Most optical places will have the measurement on the demo lens. So if you already have an idea of what you're wearing, then just look at those numbers and try those on. If you've never picked a pair of glasses before, the best thing to do is just try one on and see how it feels. If you feel like there's a lot of pressure on your temples or back here by your ears, then look at that number, that bigger number, the one that's going to be like 52, 55, maybe 57. And if it's too tight, then look for a bigger number. Now, if you try a pair of glasses on and the glasses are like really big and that's not your style, then definitely look for something smaller. Now, as far as the shape of your head and the shape of the frames, there are some like guidelines that you can follow, and I'll show you right here. There's this little table where it says that if you have a certain face shape, then these are the shapes of glasses that will fit versus the ones that won't. Personally, me and really at every Costco that I've worked at in the optical department, we don't follow these rules because they don't always apply. And I'm going to use me as an example. So if I can see my face correctly, I think I'm an oval shaped head, right? Do you agree? If you don't agree, let me know. I actually don't know what shape of head I have, but I think I'm oval. And in theory, round frames shouldn't fit on me. But I don't know. I actually kind of feel like these look pretty good on me. And the next pair of glasses that I'm getting is also a round frame. Now, obviously, this is a little bit of on a personal preference. Some people might not think that it's the best fit for me, but I really like these. They're very comfortable. People give me compliments on them all the time, which tells me that this table is not always going to be accurate. But there's nothing wrong with choosing the shape of the frame based on this table. I would like you to note that this is a 50 millimeter lens with a 21 millimeter bridge, where I usually wear glasses that are 54, 55, or 56. So again, when you look at those numbers, always pay attention to the bridge number as well. If this had been a 50 with an 18 millimeter bridge, it probably wouldn't look as good as it does. But because it's a little bit wider and it's not as tight, I think it's a pretty comfortable feel. So now that you've picked your frames, there are a couple of extra things that I think it's good for you to know what it means. For example, have you ever heard of a PD measurement? So PD stands for pupillary distance, and we take that when we grab this little, like, they look like binoculars, and we look through them and we put them against your forehead and we get really close, and then we ask you to look at a little like green light, and then we tell you to just stay there for a second. What this machine is basically doing is measuring the distance between your pupils. So sometimes it's going to be 65, that's going to be 57. The reason we take this measurement is so that when we send out to make the glasses, the prescription is placed correctly on your frame. Because if all glasses were just kind of standard, like right in the middle, but like if you pay attention to my glasses, like my eyes are not centered. They're not right in the middle, right? They're a little bit higher up. So if my prescription was really strong, or I had a lot of astigmatism, and they did the measurement down here, I would probably be dizzy all the time or would get headaches every day. So that's why it's really important to get that measurement so that we know exactly where to place that prescription. Along with that, we have the OC and the seg height. So these are two separate things. OC stands for ocular center, and that's just kind of like the pupillary distance. That's just seeing where your eyes are. That's going to be the measurement on the y-axis as opposed to the x-axis. So that way we can get the most accurate prescription when you get your glasses. It is important to note that we don't always take this measurement. It really all depends on how strong your prescription is. And everybody's going to tell you something different, because I've worked with opticians that they will never skip the OC. It doesn't matter how strong your prescription is, they will always take it. And then there are opticians that don't take the measurement unless you have a very strong prescription. I fall into that group of opticians where I will not take your OC height unless you have a very strong prescription. Mostly because there has been more instances where I do take that measurement and then it still makes the person dizzy with a low prescription versus not. I wish I knew the reason. I wish I could give you an answer for that, but that's just my experience. And then every time I don't take the measurement, it just works out. That being said, if you want your OC measurement taken, just ask the optician. Now, the sec height is kind of like the OC, but this is for people who need a multifocal prescription. So if you have a bifocal, whether it's lined or a progressive, meaning no line, then you will need a sec height. And this is absolutely necessary because we need to know where that prescription needs to be cut so that you're not looking into your reading when you're looking straight ahead, or so that it's not so low that in order to read something, you have to go like this. So how do we take the sec height? Every sec height will be different depending on the frame that you pick, whereas the pupillary distance measurement is based off of your eyes. So your PD won't change unless you're either really young and growing really fast, or you're older and you're shrinking. So the sec height depends on the frame because every frame is going to fit a little bit different. Like I said, this frame right here, my eyes are like way up here. So if I had a bifocal, I would mark a line right about here, because then I have all of this for my distance, and then my reader would be down here. So this would be a comfortable distance. And yes, if you want it to be a little bit lower or a little bit higher, you can also request that. Now, if you have a progressive lens, then the measurement would be right about here where my pupil is. And that's because that's where the intermediate prescription will be. If you remember when we talked about like lenses types, you have all the distance, you have an intermediate right where your pupil is, and then the reader kind of like comes down here. Marking up here doesn't mean that that's where your reader starts. It just means that's where that progression begins. But the reading will still be down here. And speaking of progressives, that takes me to the next question. What is PAL? We type in PAL on our notes. So when you get your receipt at Costco, I don't know about other locations, but at least at Costco, we write what type of lens you're getting. And sometimes we write, or I write, clear PAL transition or no transition, right? PAL means progressive addition lens. So now you know. So another thing to consider when you're getting your glasses is your prescription and how strong it is. Remember how I said that I don't take the OC unless you had a very strong prescription? That's because stronger prescriptions tend to have a thicker lens. You've ever heard of the term Coke bottle or bottle bottom lenses? That's what that is. Once you start to get into like the -5, 6, -10, -12, that you're gonna have some really thick lenses. So it's important to consider this when you're picking your frames. When it comes to thicker lenses, I always recommend rounder corners and smaller frames. And that doesn't mean that you have to go for like something that's too small for your face. I'm just saying if you have a couple of different options, but you have one like some really big frames and then you have another frame that you really like that fits you well, that's a little bit smaller, I would definitely go for the smaller one because that will cut on the thickness of that lens. Same thing with the curves. The sharper the curves, the thicker that lens is gonna be. That's because when we have like lenses are like super big cylinders. And so they are so thick at the edges. And so when you pick a smaller frame, they're able to cut a little bit smaller and therefore the thickness won't be as thick. I hope that made sense. But yeah, that's how it works. It is also important to know that when you have thick lenses, sometimes if you have a very strong prescription, meaning like a -7, -8, if you order a pair of plastic frames, that lens might be so thick on the edge of it that it's gonna push the temples outward. And so when you put them on, they're gonna feel so big. And then you're gonna ask for the optician to fix them. And then sometimes the only thing we can do is bend it at the nose bridge, and then they just feel awkward. Prescription's not gonna be accurate. You might get some headaches from that as well. So I would go for metal frames, meaning a full metal frame, not the semi-rimless. Never get semi-rimless. Semi-rimless get so thick. Definitely do not recommend semi-rimless or full rimless lenses when you have a very strong prescription. I recommend full metal, some plastics, or maybe LASIK or contacts. And sometimes, unfortunately, it's just unavoidable. Again, because every frame's a little bit different, my best recommendation is just go talk to the optician. Ask him how it's going to affect the frame with your lenses if you have something that's a little bit stronger. So a couple of last questions that we get a lot that I would like to answer here right now is if you have a pair of sunglasses and you want to get your prescription in them, they need to be prescription frames. You can't just go buy a pair of Oakleys or Ray-Ban or Maui Jim and then have at least Costco. We can't do that. If you have a Maui Jim or any of those higher brand frames, you can get them through the company, but they're going to be very expensive. But they're good. I have nothing against that. I'm just talking right now at the cost of the lens. If you bring a frame that's not from Costco, but it's brand new, we can sometimes take them. There's a $25 fee that we have to charge you for them aside from the lenses. So if it's worth it to you and you really like that frame, then I would definitely try. We can never guarantee it because we don't know if our machines in our Costco lab are going to be able to cut the lens for the frame. If you bring us a frame from Costco that's 2 years old or older, sometimes we have to deny them, even if they're in really good condition, if they seem sturdy. But that's because materials just become brittle. And again, once we start like changing the lenses, they're more prone to breaking. They can break at the lab. Sometimes they'll break like a month or two after you get them back. And that's probably the worst, is when you bring back a frame and you're like, hey, I just want the lenses replaced. We send them out, no problem, we get them back, but then they've been put through so much stress that after just a couple of months of wear, they'll just snap. All right, that is it. I hope this really helped you out. And as always, if you have any further questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Like, ask me all of the questions. I love going through the comments, reading the questions, being able to answer them. Sometimes I'll answer your question and still make a video about it later on because it's such a good question. So don't be afraid to ask something or to ask to clarify anything that I've said throughout my video. I know that sometimes I can skip through certain information, or maybe I wasn't as clear as I thought I was. And if this video was helpful for you, please leave a big like, comment, share it, subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps my channel. It helps me being able to post all of these videos for you and help you come in, like, see a little bit of our world from the employee's perspective. And until next time, bye.